been smiling all through this debate. Major Gaurav, they are still smiling, and they like the situation. They like the situation right now in Sri Lanka. They like the instability, and one would say draw a parallel between what's happening in Sri Lanka and what's also bound to happen in Pakistan.
Very well articulated, Shravan. The fact of the matter is that China gives loans. All these loans at very high interest rates, infrastructure projects that nobody needs. For example, in Sri Lanka, you have the Hambantota port. You also have that international airport where apparently Forbes covered the story, BBC covered that story. It was also covered by Al Jazeera and CNN that no flights land at their airport. So what happens is that essentially China gives these kinds of loans to countries that are small, with small populations, countries that have a corrupt elite, countries that are inherently politically unstable. They have done this in Africa. They have done this with Pakistan. Now, Sri Lanka is a different case because Sri Lanka is one country that has tons of potential. I mean, there is nothing stopping Sri Lanka. But yes, financial mismanagement, as Mr. Fernando very rightly pointed out, financial mismanagement by the country's elite is the reason. Otherwise, Sri Lanka is blessed with natural resources. It has great maritime potential. There is a lot of, fishery, a lot of tourism. There is so much in Sri Lanka. But again, you see the predatory nature of Chinese investment everywhere. Name one country, and I would like to invite Mr. Gao to point out, sir, one country that has taken money from China and prospered. One country, sir, in the world. Africa, call it Nepal, Sri Lanka, and even Pakistan. Everything is going down the drain simply because the nature of the loans are like that. They are never meant to be repaid. Shravan, these loans are never meant to be repaid because they are taken at such high levels. Take the case of Sri Lanka. It's a country that was pretty stable a decade or so back. We would go to Sri Lanka, Indians would go to Sri Lanka and say, wow, what an amazing place. No longer. So obviously this is all man-made. The images that you're seeing, it is not because the Sri Lankans were not good enough. It is not because there was something wrong with Sri Lanka. It is because it is a man-made crisis. Of course, the corrupt elite and the mismanagement and the policies have a very big role to play, but so do Chinese investments. And these investments across the globe have done it. You're very right when you point out towards Pakistan. There is no way Pakistan can pay back Chinese money. Not that the Pakistanis intend paying back anybody's money. That is the last thing on their minds. But the loans are structured in such a fashion that you cannot pay it back. Shravan.
There is a reason behind it, Gaurav, because China has preyed on Sri Lanka's economic vulnerabilities, loopholes, and the corrupt practices for its political and economic calculations. But Victor Gao, straight question. You've heard Major Gaurav putting it as succinctly as possible. Name one country whose touch of hands that you have had and they've not actually gone down the drains. Name one country.
Thank you very much for having me. I listened very carefully, and you asked me to name one project. How about the high-speed railway project from Yunnan province all the way to Vientiane in Laos? This is not only the brand new railway for Laos in its history, it's the first high-speed railway throughout the ASEAN 10 countries. So if you talk about real project, this is a real project. Another one you can think about is the railway project in Kenya, linking from the hinterland in Kenya on the mountains all the way to the port city. Now, these are real projects. Do some homework and dig out the information and do the research. Now, another thing, do you know who owns China the most amount of money? It's not Sri Lanka. It's not Pakistan. It's not any African countries. It's the United States. They own China more than $3 trillion US. Why don't you blame the United States for borrowing so much from China? Why do you blame Sri Lanka for borrowing that tiny amount of money from China to sponsor the infrastructure projects? In China, we've learned a very good lesson. Without building a road, without building your infrastructure, you cannot strike gold. You cannot really develop your economy. So if you really want to promote economic development, build a road, build infrastructure project. This is the basic, this is development basic ABC. And I hope we can share this information with all the friends in the world. Allow me also to mention, the world is at a crossroad. We have this financial crisis, food crisis, energy crisis, etc. The real cause for the problem in Sri Lanka is the combination of all these major crises together and breaking the
I know
situation.